In a rare moment heading towards this year's Mania, WWE have stumbled across a number of potentially great storylines, potentially being the key word, of course. Kofi Kingston has forged a storyline WWE fans didn't even know they wanted, carving out a road to WrestleMania to face Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship, having well and truly grabbed the fabled brass ring after Mustafa Ali's unfortunate injury. The ongoing drama between Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey has provided one of the most naturally organic storylines in quite some time, and if they can just navigate the next few weeks without overdoing it, it could well provide the most historic main event moment since Daniel Bryan's win in New Orleans. Now, while the modern day does seem to be shaping up quite nicely, there are many storylines before them that have laid the foundations for the show of shows and defined exactly what the gold standard is when it comes to delivering a real WrestleMania moment. I'm Adam Nicholas, and this is the 10 best ever WrestleMania storylines. Number 10, Roddy Piper and Bret Hart battle with respect. WrestleMania 8. The Intercontinental title picture at WrestleMania 8 could have been a disaster had the Mountie romped into Indianapolis with the gold. His loss to a fired-up Roddy Piper at the '92 Royal Rumble instead paved the way for Piper to defend against Bret Hart in a workhorse versus workhorse classic that was all about respect. Bret and Roddy were both babyfaces heading into the match, and that wasn't a tale that WWF enjoyed during that era. Somehow, despite being part of a card rife with personal issues, they were able to make their match stand out because it was built on mutual admiration and friendship. A friendship that occasionally threatened to get quite ugly. Seeing Piper battle with his conscience when he could have bludgeoned Bret with the ring bell and watching the pair get heated in a pre-match promo was stirring stuff. This, more than anything, showed that Bret Hart was a main event star in the making. Number 9, the Chris Jericho, Trish Stratus, Christian love triangle. WrestleMania 20. Now, here's a story WWE probably wouldn't try to do today. Tag partners Chris Jericho and Christian put on a $1 bet, Canadian of course, to see who could, how do we put this, fondue with Trish Stratus?
So are you two, do you fondue?
Despite its origins and the healthy rivalry caused between Jericho and Christian, it would eventually lead to Y2J developing real feelings for Trish, who seemed to reciprocate as the pair looked set to become an item. But then, just as the best babies in the world at what they do seemed to be on the cards, Trish would stab Jericho in the back at WrestleMania 20, turning on him during his match with Christian. The whole thing was orchestrated perfectly, as Trish's presence had played on Jericho's emotions, and the split between Christian and Y2J came just in time for a WrestleMania match. And going into the show, this was actually one of the most emotionally heated matches in the company. Maybe aside from the sophomoric bet between the boys, this was very simple but very effective storytelling all around. It developed Trish as a great heel, got sympathy for a jilted Jericho, and presented Christian as the conductor of chaos. Number 8, Shane McMahon defends his mother's honor. WrestleMania 17. Goosebumps were everywhere inside the Houston Astrodome when a drugged-up Linda McMahon rose from her wheelchair and kicked Vince McMahon squarely in those famous grapefruits of his. This, whether you liked it or not, was Attitude Era McMahon silliness at its absolute finest. Now, having said that, let me be perfectly clear. This was absolutely ridiculous. We had Vince acting like a playboy by smooching Trish Stratus literally in front of his heavily sedated wife, and a rebellious son Shane was out for blood after purchasing the remnants of WCW from right under his father's nose just to prove a point. The WWF managed to tie all of this together into a melodramatic street fight at WrestleMania 17, and while it was pretty damn ridiculous, it was all of the good. Shane's bid to defend his mother's bruised honor against his tyrannical father was prime soap opera bullshit that had people hooked in 2001. It was absurd, it was over the top, and it was outrageous, but my god, it was an absolute riot. Number 7, Shawn Michaels needs to beat The Undertaker. WrestleMania 26. Now, there may never be better back-to-back matches on WrestleMania cards than those worked by Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25 and WrestleMania 26. Though some prefer the first match, the actual story heading into the sequel was much more intriguing and played more on the audience's love for both of the legends. To HBK, beating The Undertaker in 2010 was absolutely everything. There was no tomorrow for Michaels if he didn't get the job done. And literally too, his entire career was on the line in this match. WWE's build towards the match, complete with Shawn obsessing over the prior year's loss and The Undertaker refusing to wrestle him again, made the fans absolutely desperate to see a repeat. The inclusion of Michaels costing Taker the world title at Elimination Chamber also upped the ante, forcing the dead man's hand and giving WWE a clear road towards Shawn Michaels' retirement. Number 6, Owen Hart steps out of Bret Hart's shadow. WrestleMania 10. The job Bret Hart did of enhancing another worker's career without sacrificing his own back in 1994 was nothing short of masterful. Now, in fairness, while little brother Owen saying he had to kick Bret's leg out from under his leg at the Royal Rumble might have sucked, and That's putting it mildly. Bret Hart vs Owen Hart at WrestleMania 10 was an absolute masterclass in technique and a pristine example of how actual wrestling can tell stories better than promos if the two men involved are good enough. Starting back at Survivor Series the previous year, Owen's quest to step out of Bret's sizable shadow and stand on his own 2 feet was wonderfully worked. It encapsulated Survivor Series, the Royal Rumble, and WrestleMania 10, then led to Owen's King of the Ring win, a smashing cage effort at SummerSlam, and Owen's vindictive decision to cost Bret the title at Survivor Series 1994. And the story would come full circle years later when Bret convinced his brother to work alongside him in a revamped Hart Foundation, and these old issues were dug up to chronicle their animosity. This brutal brotherly warfare was one of the best there is, best there was, and maybe, just maybe, the best there ever will be. Number 5. Kane seeks vengeance on The Undertaker, WrestleMania 14. The WWF's decision to, somewhat mercifully, turn Glenn Jacobs from fake Diesel knockoff into The Undertaker's char-grilled brother was very smart indeed. Kane's mission to destroy his sibling mimicked an age-old Bible tale, launched a new character successfully, and finally gave Taker a monster foe he could actually work with. And there were fireworks for this feud, both literally and figuratively. Creative bust out every pyrotechnic stunt they could think of in the build to WrestleMania 14, and they crafted a story that complemented the much more realistic angle of Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Shawn Michaels in the process. Now, to fans of The Undertaker's supernatural theatre, it was absolute heaven. Had the story not been so well produced and told, there's no chance Kane would have gone on to become one of WWE's longest-serving stars. His first showing was vital, and more importantly, it was a winner. Number 4. Andre the Giant turns on Hulk Hogan, WrestleMania 3. In 1987, Andre the Giant was turned from friendly, well-meaning big man into necklace-ripping, shirt-tearing, finger-pointing badass who wanted to beat Hulk Hogan. His challenge to Hulk for WrestleMania 3 on an episode of Piper's Pit remains to this day one of WWE's most memorable angles of all time, and for good reason. Hogan, angling for that elusive Oscar his Hollywood career just wouldn't quite manage to attain, looked devastated by Andre's betrayal. Everyone involved played their roles to perfection, including Piper and Andre's new manager, Bobby Heenan. Aligning the Giant with the Brain confirmed his newfound heel status, gave Hogan another reason to be irate, and let Heenan do most of the talking during the build to Mania 3. By the time the pair got to the Pontiac Silverdome, the match itself was actually secondary to the story, and that was a good thing too. But even though the creaking Andre could barely move, it really didn't matter. The hype to see the Hulkster topple the Giant had reached fever pitch. Number 3. Daniel Bryan beats the Authority, WrestleMania 30. 27 years later, a different breed of wrestling fans altogether were hyped to see the underdog Daniel Bryan cement his legend. On TV, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon told Bryan he was a B+ player and said he'd never become the face of their company. Well, as I'm sure it was probably meant to, that rubbed some of the fans up the wrong way, and they instantly started to believe that WWE genuinely didn't view their hero as a viable champion. Maybe they didn't, and maybe the story just fell into their laps, but WWE definitely toyed with that section of the fanbase from July 2013 right up until WrestleMania 30. Bryan was undermined at every turn, told he wasn't nearly a marketable enough star, and was the victim of sabotage from the Authority whenever he came close to winning the title. But eventually the fans would get their wish, and in the end, Bryan would beat Triple H cleanly in the opening at Mania before he overcame Randy Orton and Batista in the main event triple threat to become the WWE World Champion. The outburst of emotion was thunderous from fans, and both WWE's teasing and their campaigning for change was suddenly all very worth it. Number 2. Shawn Michaels is forced to put down his hero, WrestleMania 24. Right, now before we get into this one, yes, Ric Flair would wrestle again after this on a special Hulkamania tour, and yes, also numerous times for TNA down the line as well. But do you know what it is? Come on, man, just work with me for a little bit here. Ric Flair's announcement that he'd never retire, followed by Vince McMahon's warning that the next match he lost would be his last, kickstarted one of 2007 to 2008's best storylines. Consequently, it augmented WrestleMania 24's appeal, gave Shawn Michaels the chance to work with his childhood hero on wrestling's biggest stage, and was most likely responsible for a bizarre anomaly on the Kleenex sales charts of March 2008. The story was fairly simple. Shawn didn't want to put Flair out to pasture, but his professional pride meant he had to. Meanwhile, Rick tearfully waved goodbye to his timeless career and was forced to accept the fact that while the mind was willing, the body just wasn't anymore. Their build, the pressure on Ric Flair's shoulders to have a classic on his way out, his subsequent Hall of Fame induction, the match they worked, and the very real tears from both men afterwards was nothing short of truly special. And number 1, the Mega Powers explode, WrestleMania 5. Now, younger fans may look at this one with some skepticism, but quite frankly, you absolutely shouldn't. A dip back into the archives of the WWE Network will reveal just how well layered the breakdown of Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage's friendship actually was. And of course, when the Mega Powers did actually explode, they did it in the grandest of fashions. We had promos that revealed Macho Man's fear of Hulk lusting after Miss Elizabeth, the subtle hand on Liz's behind from Hogan during the celebrations that drove Savage mad, and Hogan's continuous plea for calm were all sheer magic. This, without hyperbole, is one of the most well-crafted storylines in wrestling history, and it deserves its slot as the best in Mania folklore. Hulk played the oblivious pal, Randy played the possessive lover, and Elizabeth played the poor dame caught in the middle of it all. The WWF couldn't have picked a better angle to lead into Mania 5 with, and they were gifted with two of the finest promos in the business to sell it.
Hello WhatCulture, my name is Simon Miller and today I have an announcement so big, so huge, it's gonna shatter the very foundations of your life to the point you may need to phone up a friend and say, I don't even know who I am anymore, I have just heard the news, have you heard the news? I've heard you out there, I've seen you've been commenting, I've read your tweets, and I can now officially let you know that if you do enjoy Raw ups and downs, if you do enjoy SmackDown ups and downs, that now you'll be able to set your watches to them, you'll be able to make notes in your calendars, because we're gonna have an official time for when they're gonna go live. I know, massive. So ups and downs for Raw will go live at 2 p.m. GMT, that's British time every Tuesday, and they will go live at 2 p.m. GMT every Wednesday for SmackDown. So you don't have to be aimlessly walking around anymore going, what do? I want to know what got up and what got down and what Seth Rollins did or what AJ Styles is up to. Now you know, 2 p.m. GMT Tuesday, 2 p.m. GMT Wednesdays, ups and downs coming at you in the face. I realize what I just said, retract that, keep moving on, and I hope to see you there soon. And I hope that we build an audience so big that if I ever wanted to march an army anywhere in the world, I could, and we'd call it the Ups and Downs Army, because I haven't come up with a better name.